For almost 80 years now, we've had the United Nations, sort of a global safety net for all of us. But here's the big question. In a world facing runaway climate change, terrifying new weapons, and technologies we can barely get our heads around, is that net actually strong enough to catch us if we fall? Let's really dig into that.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. It all started with this incredibly powerful vision. I mean, picture it, 1945. The world is literally in rubble after World War II, and the founders of the UN carved these words into its charter. It wasn't just about governments, it was for we the peoples. The whole idea was to build a truly better, safer world for everyone. A pretty noble goal, right?
But you know that phrase from the Charter, the scourge of war? Well, it's taken on a whole new meaning. Today, one of the biggest catastrophic risks the UN has to deal with is the constant, terrifying threat of nuclear weapons. It's this dark shadow that's basically been hanging over humanity for decades. And it doesn't stop there. Then you've got the full-blown planetary crisis. We're talking about runaway climate change, total ecological collapse. These are disasters that don't care about borders. They just sweep across the globe and threaten the very foundation of our societies. And to top it all off, we're facing risks that the people who wrote that charter in 1945, well, they couldn't have even dreamed them up. Things like artificial intelligence and biotech are moving at lightning speed. They hold incredible promise, for sure, but they also come with dangers our global rulebook just wasn't designed for, not even close. So, with all those massive challenges on the table, let's take a step back and really look at that original vision, a vision for humanity. Now, to make that vision a reality, the UN couldn't just rely on hopes and dreams. It built a pretty sophisticated global toolkit. And a huge part of that toolkit is its ability to take super complex science and translate it into policies that governments can actually use. Think about the Paris Agreement on climate. That's the UN's toolkit in action. And this right here, this is basically the UN's brain trust. You've got these groups, like the IPCC for climate and the IPBES for biodiversity. They're not just a few people in a room. They bring together thousands of the world's top scientists. Their job is to sift through all the research and basically hand policymakers a report that says, okay, here's the science, this is the clearest picture of the threats we're facing. So you think with all that brainpower, we'd be acing this, right? Well, the results are kind of mixed. On climate, yeah, we've made some progress. We've managed to steer away from the absolute worst-case scenarios, which is good. But then you look at biodiversity. We set these big, ambitious goals and then completely missed the previous targets. It's a pattern, really. The Sustainable Development Goals, only about 15% of those targets are on track. So the toolkit exists, but how well we're using it, that's a whole other question. But it's not all doom and gloom. The UN knows that collaboration is absolutely key. Take the One Health approach. This is brilliant. It gets the World Health Organization, the Food and Agricultural Organization, and others all in the same room. They've realized that you can't separate human health, animal health, and the health of the environment. It's all connected. The goal here is to get ahead of the curve and try to stop the next pandemic before it even has a chance to start. Okay, so we've seen the UN's toolkit, but now let's talk about what it's up against. We're in a whole new age of risk. It's like a constant onslaught of modern threats. First up, those weapons of mass destruction we mentioned earlier. The risk isn't going down, it's actually getting worse. The world is becoming more fragmented, with big powers competing against each other, and all those international agreements that were supposed to keep these weapons in check, they're under a ton of strain. Second, the environmental threat is kicking into overdrive. This isn't about slow, gradual warming anymore. The science is telling us we're hitting critical tipping points, points of no return, way faster than anyone expected. We're talking years, sometimes even decades ahead of schedule. And threat number 3, that new frontier of risk from technologies like AI. These things are developing at an insane pace. It's like they're a bullet train, and our global government systems are, well, they're still learning to ride a bicycle. The system has just been way too slow to keep up. And here's a number that should really make you sit up and listen. 6 out of 9. What does that mean? Well, scientists have figured out there are 9 essential planetary boundaries. Think of them as the guardrails that keep our planet stable and safe for us to live on. We are already pushing past, or are about to push past, 6 of them. This isn't some far-off problem for our grandkids. It is happening right now. So all this pressure, it's really starting to show the cracks in the system. The UN was built for a different time, and now it is seriously under strain. One of the biggest problems? Total paralysis. The UN gets hamstrung, and a lot of that comes down to the Security Council. See, it was set up back in 1945, and it gives 5 countries, the permanent members, veto power. That means just one of them can shut everything down. A perfect example was in 2021, when Russia single-handedly vetoed a resolution that tried to link climate change with global security. One no vote, and the whole thing was dead in the water.
Then there's this issue of fragmentation. Think about it. All our biggest problems are connected, right? Climate affects security, which affects the economy. But the institutions we have to solve them often work in their own little bubbles or silos. They don't talk to each other. So what good is that amazing scientific toolkit if the climate experts aren't talking to the security experts? It's kind of wild. But the UN's top science groups for climate and biodiversity only really started coordinating their work in 2021. And really, this just says it all. We've got a 20th century system trying to solve 21st century problems, and it's just been way, way too slow to adapt to this new world of threats.
On top of all that, there's a huge inclusivity problem. So much of what the UN does is still focused on governments talking to other governments. But what about everyone else? What about civil society, indigenous communities, women? These are the people who are often on the front lines, who actually have the knowledge and the solutions. And yet so often their voices are completely left out of the conversation. Okay, but it's not all bad news. People at the highest levels know the system is broken, and there's now a really serious push for a total reboot. And the person really leading that charge is the UN Secretary General himself, Antonio Guterres. Just last year, he put out something called a new agenda for peace. It's basically a bold new plan to completely overhaul how we handle these huge global risks by getting countries to actually work together again. And look at what this agenda focuses on. It's a direct response to everything we've been talking about. It's about getting nuclear weapons under control, finally connecting the dots between climate, peace, and security, and figuring out some rules of the road for new technologies like AI. And all of this momentum is leading up to this huge event in 2024, the Summits of the Future. People on the inside are saying this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to actually fix and upgrade our system of global governance. It's a real make-or-break moment. Are we actually going to make the big changes we need to? Which really brings us back to the ultimate question. The UN was created to stop another world war. A massive goal, for sure. But the challenge today is even bigger. Can that same organization be fundamentally redesigned to ensure our global survival? Is just tweaking the system enough? Or do we need something radically different? Something some are calling a second constitution for this entirely new era we're living in. What do you think?